Okay, well, Top Gun Maverick was so good that I thought it would be fun to do an actual video commentary of sorts on it, just for the fun of it. So, where to begin? Yeah, it. This movie really started out as just yet another sequel that nobody wanted, and that seemed like kind of an act of desperation on Tom Cruise's part. Kind of like when Sylvester Stallone went back to Rambo and Rocky in the 2000s. And people were like, "Oh wow, like how pathetic!" He's so sad. His career is in such a bad place that now he's got to just go back to the and milk his original characters, and now they're all just going to be old and flabby and lame, and it's going to be so embarrassing. And then, of course, Stallone actually did a pretty good job playing old Rambo and Rocky, even to the point of continuing into the Creed movies. But still, having said that, Top Gun did not seem like Maverick just wasn't a character that seemed like he would exist that well outside of the original movie. And the movie itself didn't seem like it would exist that well outside of the 80s. It was just such an era specific classic. And then they make this movie and it finally gets released, and it goes from, well, it not only doesn't taint the original or feel like a cheap, sad cash grab or what have you. It was so good that it literally makes the original almost feel like it was like a less inspired prequel that came out after this one. Like Top Gun Maverick was the A New Hope. And then years later, they're like, okay, we've got CGI technology so good, we can perfectly de-age the actors. There really isn't anywhere to go after Maverick. It's like everybody kind of lives happily ever after and whatnot. But our movie spends a lot of time like referencing past events. So let's make a prequel where we see all the Maverick in his prime and we see Rooster's dad when he was alive, blah blah blah. And and then the 1986 movie comes out and it's like, oh, okay, I see how you tried to kind of make it fit, but yeah, it doesn't really just have the same magic. I mean, that's how freaking awesome Top Gun Maverick was. And I could even just see, just to kind of run with that notion, like if Top Gun was the prequel, people would be watching it going, okay, so they take this one sweet impromptu maneuver that Maverick does when he's training the new cadets, where he, pulls up on the FA-18 and lets the guy fly under him, and then he gets the kill. And now, like, half the movie is, I'm going to hit the brakes and it'll fly right by. I'm going to hit the brakes and it'll fly right by. It's like, oh my gosh, they got to now just milk that cool little moment and make it its own big event. Or like a Goose's death, people would watch and be like, "What? He died in a training exercise? That's all they could come up with? I thought he had some it was this badass death where they're in a dogfight or something, and he just dies in training. That's kind of lame." What else? The Yeah, I mean, the original is still a classic. The original is still iconic. The original still is just as good as it ever was. It only diminishes, for lack of a better way to describe it, in comparison to Maverick. Even like the volleyball scene. I shouldn't say even like the volleyball scene. A lot of people laugh at that way before the sequel came out. And it's one of those scenes where you either just outright like kind of chuckle at how silly it is, or you just roll your eyes and probably think it's dumb. And you just kind of forgive it because it's just part of the movie and it's just so memorable, you know, they're playing with the boys and the guys are all oiled up and looking ripped and filmed in that like perfect, you know, like sunset lighting and everything. But in Maverick, like the football scene, you don't feel that at all. You literally just watch that scene, and now having seen the movie twice, I mean, at first, like when you first like they cut to that scene and he's spinning like the football in his hand, you assume it's going to be like the volleyball scene. So the first time you watch it, you kind of go like, oh no, but the scene plays out and you just authentically enjoy it. And then when you see it again, you don't even think of the silly volleyball scene. You just enjoy the football scene. You just enjoy seeing the cadets. I don't know what else to call them. They're all like veteran pilots, but whatever you call the people when they're in Top Gun school. You just enjoy seeing the cadets coming together as a team. And you kind of hope that Rooster and Maverick will, you know, be able to bond a little bit in that moment too. And it's just fun, and you just feel good watching it. You feel you smile when they all tackle the black guy at the end and dogpile him, and so you just enjoy it. It's just another part of the movie that makes you feel good, and it serves a purpose in the story other than just making Maverick late for a date. It actually, you know, is literally set up to be this team building exercise that Maverick does deliberately. And it just works. And that's basically all of Top Gun Maverick. It doesn't feel any of it like it's stuck in a specific time. Yes, it does not have the super memorable soundtrack. I think the score is good. I mean, of course, they reuse a lot of stuff from the original with the Top Gun anthem and things like that. Not as much as the original, but they do use some of that. The music that is used in the movie is still good. It fits. But I don't think in 20 or 30 years people will watch Top Gun Maverick and like get a chuckle out of it. I think it really is just going to be a timeless movie. And because of how they filmed it, the action is forever going to be timeless. It's forever going to be awesome because they actually were filming real FA-18s and had actual cockpit shots in those same jets. And so that instantly puts it on like the same level as Road Warrior or something where the visuals are never going to be dated. And okay, yes, George Miller did a lot of auto cranking of the speed in the Mad Max movies to, you know, kind of give that heightened effect or impression of speed, but still it works, and the stunts are all real. And to this day, if you watch The Road Warrior and you see the guy on the motorcycle crash into the car and then go literally flipping end over end through the air, you're just like, whoa, you know, and you just wonder if that guy walked away from that scene at all. And that's all of the action in Maverick. Now the original Top Gun, the scenes hold up well. I mean, it was pretty much all real fighters too, other than the, you know, I guess blue screen that they did for the actors in the cockpits, which actually looks good. And you know, and then they use some miniatures and models just for like when the MiGs are exploding. But otherwise, you know, the visuals in Top Gun hold up, and in Maverick, they're completely seamless with that. You could tell, unfortunately, that, you know, like some of the missile stuff was, there were just the two scenes where I kind of was like, okay, CGI. And that was when Maverick was doing, you know, his little test, proving to everybody that you could do the course. And then he shoots the missiles at the end and it blows up on the ground. You could tell that was CGI. And then like the cruise missiles that are launched from the carrier. I don't know how you do that for real, but you could just kind of tell. I mean, just a couple little moments like that. But yeah, that's just how good the movie was compared to what we were expecting it to be, thinking that it was only going to taint the original. Nope, it actually was so freaking good that it surpassed the original in a way where now you're looking at flaws in the original that you kind of were forgiving before. And then just, and then you can't help but do the same thing with like other quote unquote legacy sequels, like the Force Awakens or Ghostbusters Afterlife or Blade Runner 2049. And Blade Runner 2049, I still think is just an absolutely incredible movie, but they did not find a way to keep Deckard as the main character throughout the whole thing. No, they kind of had to have him be, sort of a background supporting character. Ghostbusters Afterlife. Okay, the thing with like Ghostbusters and The Force Awakens, well, kind of the entire sequel trilogy is like one of people's, there's so many complaints, but obviously one of the biggest complaints that people had with the sequel trilogy is we're all so excited to see how Han and Luke and Leia turned out. And then we learned that like all three of them are pretty much freaking miserable when we meet them and that they've been miserable for years. And Ghostbusters kind of did that too. It's like, oh yeah, Egon was just alone and sad and died by himself because the other Ghostbusters hated him. And yeah, with Ghostbusters, they kind of have their little reunion as ghosts at the end, but it was like you're supposed to cry at that scene. You're supposed to go, oh, that's so nice that they're together and look at that and pass the Kleenex, blah blah blah. And what I love about Maverick is that it dares to not be bittersweet. There's no Iron Man dying or Peter, like everybody, including MJ, forgetting who he is, or everybody dying, thinking of Rogue One, or the Egon, okay, they had all separated and kind of come together just for this sort of moment where the ghost and the guys, and or the sequel trilogy where everybody's dying. Everybody takes turns dying alone, basically. Han, then Luke, then Leia. And it kind of gives a level of a happy ending, but it's definitely, at best, bittersweet. And I really do like that in movies to a point. And I certainly like it in movies that are just sort of grim and gritty right from the get-go. Your Blade Runners, your Aliens, or Terminator. I think bittersweet is great. I think you can kind of get away with it in, Lord of the Rings was kind of a downer with Frodo leaving. And I know he did that in the book and everything. But I did come to realize, as awesome as it was to see Harrison Ford get his wish and have Han Solo die, I did come to realize that, George Lucas was right for Return of the Jedi. He's like, no, I want people coming out of the theater feeling good about the movie. I want them feeling good about life. I want them to feel good about just, aspirations and hopes and dreams, and that good prevails and all that fun stuff. And oh my gosh, do you get that with Maverick? I was even thinking when I was watching the movie the second time, because of course now I know that Iceman dies. Spoiler alert. I was thinking like, what? When does that happen in the movie? I couldn't really think of where it fit. As again, I'm just totally sucked into the beginning of the movie, and then I'm like, is that how the movie ends? Do they do they come back and then they get the news and there's the funeral? And then no, that's not what happens at all. And I was very quickly reminded when that scene happened that no, they do it in the middle of the movie, like what, 2/3 in or what have you, so that you're not ending on that downer note. And it wasn't just put in there for some cheap tears or, nostalgia, sadness or anything like that. It was perfectly used in the movie to drive the next elements forward, where now he doesn't have that safety net of, Iceman was like his Obi-Wan, or his Gandalf. And that just right there, that's starting to just touch on how almost transcendent this movie was. There's so much like Star Wars level, I don't want to say mythology, but it's definitely an elevated way to tell the ongoing story of Maverick and these characters. And so when he loses Iceman, it drives the next phase of the story, where he's got to now overcome and not having that safety net, that shield that Iceman provided, and figuring out how to move forward with his team and keep them alive. Again, obviously, I mentioned Star Wars and all that stuff. It's just so funny to me how much of a better job Top Gun Maverick did at kind of recreating the excitement and the feel of A New Hope than The Force Awakens did. And I even chuckled the second time. Phoenix actually even literally says, "Stay on target." She doesn't sound like that, but she actually says, "Stay on target" when they're flying through the canyon. I'm like, okay, is that just a common term for like people on a bombing run, or are they quoting The New Hope? Which probably means they were quoting Dam Busters, now that I think of it, because so much of A New Hope, the end attack was like line by line and scene by scene was from Dam Busters. But be that as it may, they had that perfect setting of the stage for the final assault, and total Star Wars with the trench run and the torpedoes, hitting the exhaust port, but no, you got to do it twice, and oh yeah, you got to do it blind, the final shot. Maverick doing the course for everybody in like record time when they didn't believe you could even do it in a slower time was basically his version of lifting the swamp, or lifting the X-Wing from the swamp, I should say. And, because people wouldn't believe, and now they do. And just seeing like, wow, what a true master is capable of. And so it just touches on that type of a hero story that we always love to watch. And I loved how organically they continued the story of Maverick without this contrivance over, again, I guess I'm just going to pick on Force Awakens for a little while. The whole we don't know what Han would be like as a general in the New Republic, so we're just going to say that he was depressed and became a smuggler again. Okay, first off, why does that have to be the reason? And if you wanted him to kind of be doing more Han Solo-y things, why couldn't you have gotten there a different way? Like, now having seen Maverick, it's like, okay, what would be the Maverick way of making Han Solo like a smuggler again? Well, he probably wouldn't have exactly been a smuggler, because Top Gun Maverick doesn't start with Maverick on that carrier in the beginning when they're playing like Danger Zone and whatnot. No, they switch gears and now he's a test pilot, which is just brilliant. Literally, even when I was a kid, because I was 12 when Top Gun came out, literally the first movie I ever saw more than once in the theater. But I remember at the end of that movie when they defeat the MiGs and they come back and they celebrate, and the carrier captain, the bald guy from Back to the Future, I can't remember his name, who knows his name anymore, but he asked Maverick what he's going to do next, and that now he can kind of just pick his position, and Maverick says Top Gun instructor. Well, I remember as a kid thinking that made sense just within the context of what had been set up in the movie. Because Viper literally says, towards the beginning of the movie, if some of you are lucky, you may even, come back and be Top Gun instructors or something like that. He kind of set that carrot out there, like that's what you're going for. And so it kind of made sense for Maverick to just pick that rather than some other random thing that had never been mentioned in the movie. But I had a hard time picturing Maverick doing that. It honestly kind of felt like a step back to me. And even in the years later, rewatching the movie. Because it's like, it's almost like him getting a desk job or something. Yeah, it's cool to be a Top Gun instructor and to just be considered the best of the best and looked up to as the best of the best and having your name on the plaque and da-da-da. But that just didn't really, it kind of went against the, you're only happy when you're going Mach 2 and your hair's on fire. Viper went up for one exercise, but he wasn't flying all the time. And so I was like, okay, hey, you know what? It wraps the movie up in a neat little bow. But to me, it's like he starts out on a carrier, messing around with MiGs, and that seems to be where he's happiest. But the course of the movie, his character grows by learning, you shouldn't be showboating and screwing around, flipping off the MiG pilots when your wingman is unattended to. And obviously the whole course of the rest of the movie is, largely him learning how to be dependable and a team player and not, quote unquote, dangerous to his fellow teammates, which, he fulfills at the end of the movie. So it's like, the movie's bookended with this, engagement with the MiGs at the beginning, and then he has the actual, combat engagement at the end where he applies everything that he learned. And so it's like now he's just going to be a better fighter pilot. And so for him to be like grounded and just an instructor at such an early age, I was like, okay, whatever. We're never going to see that. So it doesn't really matter what they say he's going to do. But I just had a hard time kind of picturing that would be Maverick's life. So I like that they addressed that in Maverick. They're like, yeah, I lasted 2 months as an instructor, and then he just went right back into combat. And they mentioned that he, went to Bosnia and Iraq. I think like a couple tours in Iraq or something like that. Which apparently he was doing nothing but ground support, I guess, like supporting the ground from the air, which FA-18s are, well designed to do. But they made a point to call out that he had 3 enemy kills of the last 40 years or whatever. So apparently he never actually engaged any other aircraft. But still, they had him in conflict zones, which was cool. And then they made him the test pilot. And I could almost see like the military being like, okay, Maverick is Maverick, and he's kind of high profile, and he's served the country well. But where can we just put him where he's not going to screw up too much stuff, where his his fearlessness and instincts will be a benefit. And it's like, okay, yeah, a test pilot, just test all kinds of crazy aircraft. Literally, again, so organic. And so, but so Maverick-y. So I really liked that was how, that we learned that that's really what he'd been doing for, however many years, since at least the Iraq conflicts. Compared to Han Solo, well, first of all, we have no idea what he was doing up until Ben, his son, turned to the dark side, and then he just leaves Leia and goes back to doing the only thing he was ever good at. So apparently he was just doing things that he sucked at for 22 years, and then however, or 25 years, however long, Ben Solo was Kylo Ren, he was a smuggler again. And so thinking like, well, what would have been the Maverick way to do that? They could have just said that, that like with the Top Gun instructor thing, that maybe he lasted being a general in peace times of like 2 months or whatever kind of short time frame. Maybe it was 2 days, and he was like, forget this. I'm wearing this these dress military uniforms and being a general and just kind of being Leia's arm candy while she does all this diplomatic stuff. Nope, I'm out. And he doesn't leave her. Or he doesn't just go back to become a 2-bit smuggler when they probably have all the money that they need. But say maybe he takes a job, he's like, some sort of border czar, let's say, with the Outer Rim and contraband, where he's in charge of, kind of managing contraband coming in and out of into the core worlds from the Outer Rim, let's say. And so he has a team or an organization, and he's like the head of it or something, where he stops the bounty hunters or the smugglers, at least the bad ones. And, somebody bringing in an invasive species like Rathtars into the core world would have been something that if he caught wind of it, he would have taken action on. So he went out there with the ship. He, engaged the pirates, took the Rathtars into custody. And so that's why he had them on the ship. And then he comes across the Millennium Falcon when he's out there too. And then as Rey and Finn, board his ship, you've got like he apprehended the pirates because they were transporting Rathtars, but not before they got a distress signal out. And now like all these bounty hunters come to help the pirates. And so then you get them joining. Obviously, I'm trying to sort of recreate the same scenes from The Force Awakens, but with just a cooler context than him just being an alleged loser who goes all the way back down to back to square one with his character. Again, because you don't have to do that. We saw that with Maverick. He didn't just go back to just, launching off the carrier and doing patrols out in the Atlantic. He was doing newer, cooler stuff. So you felt like his character had actually progressed. And I love that Tom Cruise, and I mean, I got this from interviews, but you see it in the movie, he did not want to be a slave to the past. He did not want to spend 2 hours of Maverick just gushing about how awesome the original movie was, by having all the characters just constantly worshiping the events and the people of the first films and just recreating everything beat for beat. And yes, obviously there were parallels with the story structure of this, but again, they were parallels, but with different context each time. I mean, the movie still opens probably just, for the benefit of people who hadn't watched the original. It's like, okay, how do we reestablish Maverick as who he is for people not familiar with him? Okay, they do the test pilot thing where, he takes off when he's not supposed to, and then he pushes the jet too fast when he's not supposed to. So they did a great job of, okay, if you hadn't seen the first movie in the, 15 minutes in, who Maverick is. So that was kind of necessary, but it's still, not the same as him flipping off MiG pilots. And I already talked about how the football scene was different than the volleyball scene. It's got a parallel, but it's not the same. And obviously the dynamic between him and Rooster and getting the team to getting the pilots to be able to work as a team and under conditions that they're not used to. I didn't think about this until after seeing it the second time, but another cool parallel between the first and the second movie is how when Jester is teaching a class and kind of going over like what they're going to expect in some of their exercises, he talks about how in the Korean War, the kill ratio was 12-1. and then against the Koreans, but then in Vietnam, the kill ratio fell to 3-1. And then he says, because our pilots had become overly dependent on missiles, they'd lost some of their dogfighting skills. That's somewhat repeated in this movie where Maverick, I think he's telling John Hamm at one point, yeah, these pilots are the quote unquote best of the best, but that's the best of the best today is very different. They're high altitude doing long range strikes. And so it was kind of like, they had a reason, once again, not because of missiles, but because of all the advanced, obviously missiles would still be involved in these long range attacks, but even more so. And so he was like, yeah, we're still needing to do some intensive training on, these tight maneuvers and battles and things. So that was kind of, again, I didn't even notice that parallel the first time. So it does a really, really good job of just not hitting you over the head with some of the similarities with the first movie. I loved how people respected Maverick, as you'd think they should and would, but they didn't. I'm glad that there wasn't an extreme on either way. They didn't deify him, but then by the same token, they didn't have some girl come in and show him how he was a dinosaur and he sucked now, or somebody takes his call sign, sorry, now we got another Maverick or whatever. Just it's people busted his balls appropriately and held him in high regard appropriately. Just a really nice balance that felt authentic. It felt respectful and authentic and allowed them to kind of have some fun too, sometimes even a little bit at his expense, but just, I don't know, in an appropriate way, like with Penny messing with him, having the drinks be on him and all that stuff. And what a just great character she was. Just a great character, it's, it was kind of cool how they gave her some interesting aspects where, she runs that bar, the Hard Deck, sweet name for a bar, and, kind of gave a fun excuse to have her be like in the center of the action there. And, and then they just kind of, I don't know if you'd call it rounding out her character, but they just gave her just the cool element where she's the sailor. A cool skill for an admiral's daughter to have. But she wasn't, but that was the extent of it. And it was an opportunity for Maverick to learn something new. And, if you've never sailed before, it does seem intimidating, but it's really not that hard to pick up. It just comes down to knowing which ropes to pull, depending on how fast you want to go and like where the wind is coming from. And if you don't know what you're doing and somebody else barks some orders at you, you can pick it up pretty quickly. So, it was a really, it just fit very easily into the narrative and made for some, fun cinematography and whatnot. And even her little pep talk at the end, it was just, she's not lecturing him or anything or doing his job for him, just saying, hey, you can figure this out. You're Maverick, basically. And then he did. And that was just really, really cool. Good, just old-fashioned like storytelling that I kept kind of almost waiting for the audience to chuckle at, and they didn't. The like slow after their date where he's about to kiss her and they're about to go to bed. First of all, you hardly ever see that in movies before. I was like, wow, when was the last time that there was any level of a actual like build up to a love scene? It's like every movie the last 20 years, you have two characters kind of look at each other. You think what I'm thinking? And then like immediately immediately cut to the next scene, like he's throwing her up against the wall and pictures are falling down and now she's being tossed onto the kitchen table and they're pushing stuff off or they're just all, just naked and rolling around. And I was like, wow, this tried to be all quote unquote classy about it. I'm good. I mean, even the original Iron Man did that. And it was just very, very old fashioned how they approached the love scene, and how modest it was compared to even like again superhero movies. It was pretty modest. And when she's leaning up against the silver Porsche with the sun just bathing her in its golden light as he comes walking out of the hangar, and the music, that song kicks in. Again, I'm picturing people to just start chuckling or going, oh man. And no, people are just into it. And they're like, yeah, go get the girl, Mav. That's just when a movie is working. When it's not self-aware, it's not self-parody, it's not embarrassed to be what it is. Which, again, that was an element that was present in the Star Wars sequels. Well, what do you know about the Force? You control people and make things flow. You're kind of reducing it to just sort of some of the silly gags. No, you're reducing it. You're reducing, some cool scenes from the previous movies to be as if they were silly gags. Like you didn't even think that those were cool anymore. And Luke lifting the rocks or Yoda lifting the X-Wing or the Jedi mind tricks. It was just kind of reduced to a silly line for laughs. And or Han saying, okay, there's the third planet killing battle station. How do you blow it up? Because there's always a way to do that. And it's like, and then even as the audience, you're like, yep, there's always a way. And oh, yep, they're going to go blow it up. So rather than, holy crap, what are we going to do? We got to fight this thing and find its weakness. No, it's almost, they even had like the characters kind of like they were going through the motions in parts of the sequel trilogy. But this, they're like, nope, we're going to come together as a team. We're going to push our limits. We're going to blow up the base. And for the romantic scenes, they're just going to be super romantic. And we're just going to assume that that's what you want. And nothing, I'm so used to the freaking James Gunn crap where, there's like this sentimental moment and then there's got to be something like some crude humor that like just takes that scene sideways. Where, it's like they're having this moment about how they're all a family, but then Drax has got to say something kind of stupid, or what have you, and that never happens in this movie, and I love it. Even like when he jumps out of Penny's window to be all slick and get away from her daughter, and then the daughter's right there, and so it's like he's jumping out of the window, and then they kind of have this funny scene, and then she's like, just don't break her heart again. And it's like, boom! They get right back in the feels. They're like, no, that's how we're gonna take a funny scene and interrupt it with some surprising poignancy that is, going to be with him the rest of the movie. Oh man, I can't believe this movie exists in this current time. It does so many things that I love in movies that are so rare. And totally lost my train of thought. And I'm just so glad. Yeah, I totally uplifting it movie. Rooster seeing his little picture, of him and Maverick put on the wall in Maverick's workshop, with the other pictures of him and Iceman and him and Goose. Oh man, great stuff. I love the like the false ending Again, this is the type of stuff. Top Gun didn't have that. They all just go out, they launch from the carrier, and everybody joins the battle, and boom, they blow up the MiGs, and then they bug out and go home, which is great. I mean, it totally works. But I love that they how they do the false endings. I always love false endings. Jim Cameron is a master of that. Terminator crashes, then he comes back. The LV-426 complex blows up, and now they got to go fight the Queen. I mean, he almost had like a 3-tier ending in that one. They're escaping from operations, and then nope, now they got to go back for Ripley's got to go back for Newt, and now she's got to fight the Queen. I love that when you think a movie's kind of wrapping up, and then they hit you with just more cool stuff. So the actual trench run in Maverick was awesome. And a sweet kind of, recreation of A New Hope, basically. But then the surprise of him getting shot down, Rooster getting shot down, and then he flies in a freaking F-14 with Goose's kid. Are you kidding me? And they did it in a way that I didn't even see coming? What? Yeah, so eat your heart out, Force Awakens and Afterlife, Ghostbusters. There's no kids that you don't even really know if you like yet, taking an iconic vehicle out for a joyride. No, it's Maverick. And seriously, what the heck? Why does Ghostbusters need to be bittersweet? It's so random. It's just, we just got way too much of it in the last few years. And I'm just glad. I'm glad that nobody died. You know what? Another Star Wars parallel. The whole learning to love without attachments. Holy cow, what a major theme that was, which was just a nice counterpoint to learning to be dependable in the first movie, learning to actually be there for your wingman, and then watching in this movie how he did that to a fault, how he took it too far. He was so protective of his wingman that he wouldn't even let his wingman get off the ground. He pulled Rooster's papers before he could even be, it was like, it's like the reverse of the Terminator. You're going to stop the enemy from surviving when they're a kid, but the reverse is you're going to stop your ally from joining the fight when he's a kid. I mean, great opportunity for Maverick to grow in a way that didn't just repeat his arc from the first movie. Brilliant. Literally brilliant. It makes kind of a sweet little yin and yang with both the films and gives this one something new. And again, it just makes it feel more Star Wars-y. Would I call this movie a masterpiece? Probably not. I mean, I'd say it's like a 10 out of 10, popcorn entertainment, but it's an elevated 10 out of 10 because it has those underpinnings of like the type of arcs and themes and story structure that you would get in a Star Wars, that you would even get in like a Lord of the Rings. Kind of a bummer that it's not more like merchandise friendly. I guess I could get I'd probably buy a Hot Toys of Maverick from this movie, but it kind of seems like he needs his Maverick without his jet seems lacking. But it's not really a movie where you're gonna sit and theorize and speculate about all the lore or the side characters or stuff like that. It's just a solid just movie in its own right that is just a joy to experience. So yeah, it's we're so glad to be able to catch it on the big screen twice in a sweet auditorium. Fun crowd both times. Even the second time, 5 weeks in, when him and Rooster are like looking down at the camp and they're spying the F-14 with the binoculars. There was like a group of guys to my left and they were like younger. I would almost have thought too young to be very familiar with the original movie, maybe not. But when they saw that it was the F-14, they were literally just like what I was thinking internally the first time I saw it. They were literally verbally saying out loud, no way, no way, no freaking way. I could hear them, and they were like beside themselves with, oh my gosh, he's going to actually get in an F-14. And I don't know how they somehow blindside you with that. Maybe it's because, I don't know, it's so subtle. They're just like, yeah, here's the airfield with these 5th gen fighters, and they do have some other support craft like this helicopter, and oh yeah, and some decommissioned F-14s. It looks like they're not the only ones holding on to old relics. And you almost think that like they mentioned the F-14s just to kind of have that as a punchline. Oh, see, holding on to old relics, Mav. I just didn't think that. I did not think that he'd be flying in one of those. And just like, I mean, they show him at the beginning, he's restoring a P-51 Mustang. Nobody actually thinks he's going to get in that thing and fly it against 5th generation fighters. You just think it's kind of a cool little like reference to, to either who he is or like, oh, okay. A little bit of a link to the first movie. Oh, it's just brilliant. Just brilliant. And then him just fighting. Oh, it was great stuff. Yeah, felt so freaking good. I mean, it ends. When was the last time we saw main characters riding off into the sunset? I'm thinking it was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So this is as old school, as classic as they come. Yeah, just a sweet all around movie. I think I'm going to wrap this up, but nice, solid 2 hours, not overly long. Great stuff.